You are 19 years old, and you have just made the best decision of your life, inside a recruiting office that smells like carpet cleaner and fluorescent lighting. The recruiter shook your hand and told you the Army would make you something. He was not wrong about this. He was imprecise about what. You will figure out the what over the next several years in locations that will not appear on your resume, and during events that will not appear anywhere at all. For now, you are a private. Private is the military's way of saying you own nothing, know nothing, and owe everything to the person standing in front of you who has more stripes on their sleeve than you have months of service. Basic training is 10 weeks, in which the Army systematically removes everything you thought you knew about your own physical and psychological limits, and replaces it with a more accurate assessment. The accurate assessment is that your limits were much further out than you believed, and also that the person yelling at you while you do push-ups in the rain has absolutely no interest in your previous beliefs about your limits. You graduate. You get your assignment. Infantry. Fort Bragg. This is not an accident. You tested well. Your scores in spatial reasoning and problem solving put you in a category that certain people pay attention to. You do not know this yet. You just know you wanted infantry, and you got infantry, and the guy in the bunk next to you wanted supply and got supply, and you feel correctly that these are different situations. The infantry is where you learn what the Army actually is. Not the commercials, not the pamphlets, the actual daily reality of being a person whose job is to go to places that are dangerous and do things that are hard and come back if possible. You do deployments. You qualify on weapons systems you did not know existed 6 months ago. You learn to navigate by terrain feature at night in conditions that make navigation by terrain feature extremely unpleasant. You learn land navigation and breaching and close quarters battle and a dozen other skills that each take weeks to develop and that you will spend years refining. You are good at this. Not exceptional yet. Good. There is a difference, and the Army is very precise about the difference. Good soldiers are useful. Exceptional soldiers get noticed by people who are looking for something specific. You are working your way from good toward exceptional, with the specific patience of someone who does not know exactly what they are working toward, but understands that working hard in the direction of hard things tends to produce outcomes worth having. Your sergeant pulls you aside after a training exercise in your second year. He asks if you have thought about selection. You tell him you have thought about it. He tells you to stop thinking about it and start preparing for it. There is a difference, he says, and the difference is everything. You start preparing. Level 2. The candidate. The selection process for 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta does not advertise itself. You will not find a brochure with photographs of operators in tactical gear against dramatic backdrops. What you will find, if you are the right kind of soldier at the right point in your career, is a quiet conversation with someone who has already been through it, and a packet of information that describes what is coming in language, so deliberately understated that reading it carefully is itself a test of your ability to read carefully. What is coming is approximately 4 weeks that will systematically dismantle every assumption you have about what you are capable of, and present you with a very clear accounting of what remains when the assumptions are gone. The first week is land navigation. You carry a rucksack that weighs between 45 and 55 pounds, depending on the day and the requirement. You navigate from point to point through terrain that is designed to be unpleasant in ways that compound over time. The distances are not disclosed in advance. The time standards are not disclosed in advance. The only information available to you at any given moment is your current location, your next point, and your body's increasingly detailed report on its own condition. Sleep is available in quantities insufficient to fully recover from the previous day's work, which is the point, because the operators this process is designed to identify need to function in conditions of sustained sleep deprivation without their judgment degrading below operational utility. Some candidates quit on day 2. Some quit on day 5. Some make it through the first week and quit on the second, when the requirements change in ways that are harder to anticipate. Quitting is not criticized. Quitting is simply a data point. The process is designed to produce data points. Most of the data points produced are in the direction of this candidate is not yet what we need. You do not quit. Not because you are not tempted. On the fourth night of the first week, somewhere between the third and fourth navigation point of the day, in the dark, in rain that has been falling for 6 hours, with feet that have moved beyond the category of pain into something that is simply a persistent fact of your current existence, you have a very clear conversation with yourself about the available options. You keep moving. The assessment portion comes after the land navigation phase. This is where they watch how you think, not what you know, how you think. They put you in situations with incomplete information and limited resources and time pressure, and they watch the decisions you make and the reasoning you use to make them, and the way you respond when the decisions turn out to be wrong, which they sometimes engineer specifically to be wrong, because how a person responds to being wrong is more diagnostic than how they respond to being right. You are assessed for 4 weeks. At the end of the 4 weeks, a number of candidates receive a tap on the shoulder and a quiet word. You receive the tap. You are in. Level 3, the operator. You spend the next 6 months learning to do everything you already know how to do, better. This is not a figure of speech. Every skill you developed in infantry, every qualification you earned, every technique you drilled until it was automatic, all of it is examined and rebuilt from the foundation. Not because it was wrong, because at this level, good enough is a category that does not exist. There is only the standard, and below the standard, and the standard at Delta is defined by the requirement to operate in environments where the margin between the standard and below the standard is measured in outcomes that cannot be revised. You shoot more in the first month of the operator training course than most soldiers shoot in a year. Not because shooting is the primary skill, because shooting is the foundation skill, and a foundation that is anything less than automatic and precise is a liability in every situation that builds on top of it. You shoot until the mechanics are gone, until what remains is not technique but reflex, until the decision to shoot and the execution of the shot are a single event with no observable gap between them. You learn breaching, not the infantry version. The version that accounts for the specific geometry of every door configuration that exists in every building type that your targets are likely to occupy in every region of the world where your unit is likely to operate. You learn explosives at a level that would concern most people who are not in a position to learn explosives at this level. You learn language, one of them in depth, others at a functional level, because the environments you will operate in are not populated exclusively by people who speak English, and the ability to gather information directly without an interpreter is an operational capability that has specific value in specific situations that arise consistently in the kind of work your unit does. You graduate the operator training course. You are assigned to a squadron, a troop within the squadron, an assault team within the troop. You are an operator. The word operator is used in a lot of contexts. In this context, it means something specific. It means you are one of approximately 250 people in the United States military who have passed the selection and training process for this unit. 250 people in a military of approximately 1.3 million. The arithmetic is its own kind of answer to the question of what you have become. Your family knows you are in a special unit. They do not know which one. You tell them it is a specialized role in a support capacity. Your mother has believed several versions of this story over the past 2 years and will continue to believe variations of it for as long as you are in this unit, because the alternative is a specific kind of worry that serves no one. Your phone has a generic voicemail that tells callers you are unavailable and to leave a message. You are frequently unavailable. Level 4. The mission. You deploy for the first time as an operator on a Tuesday. Not to a base. Not to a forward operating position in any conventional sense. To a location that receives you and 6 other operators and a quantity of equipment that would not fit in your apartment, and a set of objectives that are described in a briefing that takes 3 hours and covers every contingency that the intelligence community has been able to anticipate, and several that it has not. The target is a building in a city you cannot name, in a country you cannot name, containing a person whose name exists in a classified database at a classification level that most of the people who will ever read this will never hold. Your job is to go into the building and bring the person out. Alive if possible. The if possible is doing a lot of work in that sentence. The preparation for a 40-minute direct action mission takes approximately 72 hours. You rehearse on a mock-up of the target building, built to scale from architectural intelligence and satellite imagery. You rehearse the breach. You rehearse the clearing sequence. You rehearse the contingencies. You rehearse the contingencies for the contingencies. You rehearse until the building that does not yet exist in your physical experience exists completely in your muscle memory, and the sequence of actions required to move through it is as automatic as walking. You go in at 2 in the morning. The building is darker than the rehearsal mock-up. This is always the case. There is no way to fully replicate darkness in a rehearsal environment, and darkness affects everything. It affects depth perception and timing, and the way sound moves, and the way your peripheral vision processes movement. Your night vision compensates for most of this. It does not compensate for all of it. The first room is clear. The second room is not clear. What happens in the second room takes 11 seconds and results in outcomes that are consistent with the mission objectives, and that you will describe in a debrief that lasts 2 hours and produces a report that goes up a chain of classification that ends somewhere in a building in Washington you have never been to, and whose occupants will make decisions based on what you did in 11 seconds in a dark room in a city you cannot name. You extract. You land. You debrief. You eat. You sleep 6 hours. In the morning, there is another briefing. This is the job. Level 5, the team leader. You are 29, and you lead a team. Not manage, lead. The distinction matters in every profession, and matters most in this one. Managing is the administration of processes. Leading is the real-time navigation of situations where the processes have stopped being adequate and the people around you need to know which direction to go and need to know it in the next 3 seconds, or the decision gets made by default, and default decisions in this environment have specific consequences. Your team is 12 operators. Each of them is better than you at something. One of them is the best breacher you have ever worked with. A person whose spatial understanding of how explosives interact with structural materials borders on supernatural. One of them speaks 4 languages with native fluency, and a 5th well enough to conduct a conversation under stress. One of them has a mechanical aptitude for vehicles that has extracted the team from situations where extraction appeared to be the non-available option. Your job is to know what each of them is best at, and to construct situations in which they can be best at it. Your job is also to make decisions under conditions that are specifically designed by circumstances to prevent good decision-making. Incomplete information, time pressure, physical stress, the specific cognitive load of tracking 12 people in a 3-dimensional environment while simultaneously processing incoming information and producing outgoing decisions. You have been shot. Not fatally, obviously. Left shoulder, through and through, during an extraction that did not go as planned, in a way that required 3 subsequent debriefs to fully document. You were back on rotation 11 weeks later, which is faster than the medical staff recommended, and exactly as fast as the mission tempo required. The wound is a fact. You think about it the way you think about other facts. It happened. It has consequences for how the shoulder moves in certain positions. You have adjusted your shooting stance to account for those consequences. The adjustment works. You move on. What you do not move on from as cleanly is the operator you lost 18 months ago. He was 26. He had been in the unit for 2 years. He was one of the best operators you have worked with in terms of raw capability, and one of the most difficult in terms of the specific kind of fearlessness that exists at the boundary between courage and poor risk assessment. You knew this about him. You worked with it. On the night in question, your risk assessment and his risk assessment diverged at a decision point, and his divergence produced an outcome that could not be revised. You wrote the report. You attended the service. You went back on rotation. This is what the job requires, and you meet the requirement, and the meeting of the requirement is its own specific cost that the job does not acknowledge in any official capacity. Level 6, the Squadron Commander. You are 36, and you command a squadron. A squadron at Delta is not a squadron in the conventional military sense. It is a self-contained operational unit with its own assault troops, support elements, intelligence capacity, and the full range of capabilities required to plan and execute complex direct action and special reconnaissance missions independently and without external support. You have approximately 75 people under your command. The decisions you make are no longer primarily about what happens in the building. They are about which buildings, why those buildings, at what cost, with what level of risk, and how that risk is distributed across your people and your mission objectives and the political considerations that exist at elevations above your pay grade, but whose consequences land at your altitude. You brief generals. This is a specific skill that is not taught at any level of the training pipeline, and that you have developed through exposure and the specific kind of feedback that comes from briefing generals and observing their responses to what you said. Generals have opinions. Some of those opinions are well informed by deep operational experience. Some of them are formed by other factors. Your job is to present the mission picture with enough clarity that the decision made in that room is based on the actual situation and not on a simplified version of it that fits more comfortably into a 30-minute brief. You are good at this. You are also managing the unit's relationship with the intelligence community, with the Joint Special Operations Command, with partner units across the Special Operations Enterprise, and with the specific bureaucratic machinery of a military organization that is simultaneously one of the most operationally free units in the U.S. military and one of the most carefully watched. Your marriage ended in your third year as a team leader. Not dramatically, without a single event that could be identified as the cause, with the gradual accumulation of absence and the things that absence leaves in its place. She is a good person. You are a good person. The job is a third person in the marriage who is always present and always has priority, and who neither of you chose but both of you inherited when you signed on for what this is. You have 2 children. You call them every Sunday without fail, unless you are in a location from which calling is not operationally possible, in which case you call as soon as calling becomes possible, and the conversation you have is the conversation you would have had on Sunday, compressed into whatever time is available. They know their father is in the military. They know he is in a special unit. They do not know which one. Your daughter is 11. She made a card for you last Father's Day that says, "I know you can't tell me what you do, but I'm proud of you anyway." You keep it in your kit bag. It goes everywhere you go. Level 7, the commanding officer. You are 44, and you command the unit. Not a squadron, the unit. 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, the organization that does not officially exist in any public-facing military document, and whose name appears in news coverage only when something goes wrong in a way that cannot be contained within the classification system. Your days do not look like your days at any previous level. You do not breach buildings. You do not lead teams through dark rooms. You sit in rooms with people who have significant rank and authority, and you advocate for your unit's ability to do its job with the resources and authorities it needs, to do it at the standard it has always done it. You testify before oversight committees. You do this in closed sessions. What you say in those sessions is classified. The fact that you said it is classified. You have developed a comfort with multiple simultaneous classification levels that would be difficult to explain to anyone who has not lived inside this system. An operation goes wrong, not catastrophically, but wrong in a way that produces consequences that require management at your level. An operator is injured in a way that will end his career. The intelligence that informed the operation was accurate in its essentials and wrong in a specific detail that proved to be the operationally relevant detail. You review every decision in the chain that produced the outcome. You write a findings document. You implement changes. You visit the injured operator in the hospital. He is 24. He has been in the unit for 18 months. He is going to be fine in the medical sense of fine. He is not going to be an operator again. You sit with him for 40 minutes. You do not tell him it is not his fault, because it is not his fault in the way that complex situations with multiple contributing factors are never simply one person's fault or not fault, but are always a system of decisions and circumstances that produced an outcome, and the outcome is what it is. You tell him he is one of the best operators you have seen at his stage of development. You mean it. He nods. You shake his hand. You go back to work. You retire on a Friday. There is no parade. There is a ceremony in a room that does not appear on the base's official facility map, attended by people whose names do not appear on any guest list that exists in any system. You receive a folded flag and a citation that describes your service in language precise enough to be meaningful to everyone in the room and opaque enough to be meaningless to anyone outside it. Your daughter is 22 now. She is studying international relations at a university you helped pay for with a salary that was never sufficient for what it purchased, and that you supplemented with the specific economy of a person who does not spend money on the things that people spend money on when they are home, because home was rarely where you were. She asks you, at dinner after the ceremony, what the hardest mission was. You think about this honestly. You tell her the hardest part was not any specific mission. The hardest part was the distance between what you did and what you could say about it. The gap between coming home and being home. Between sitting at the dinner table and being present at the dinner table. She nods. She has been nodding at versions of this answer her entire life. Somewhere right now, a 19-year-old is finishing basic training and testing well on spatial reasoning and getting an infantry assignment to Fort Bragg and not yet knowing what that means. They will prepare. They will go through selection. Most of them will not make it. 1 or 2 of them will receive a tap on the shoulder in the dark at the end of 4 weeks and stand there for a moment, processing what that tap means, and then start thinking about what comes next. The unit does not stop. It does not announce itself. It does not explain its work. It just continues, the way the best things continue, without fanfare, without acknowledgement, doing the thing it was built to do in the places where it needs to be done, and returning without ceremony to prepare for the next time. Your card is still in your kit bag. I know you can't tell me what you do, but I'm proud of you anyway. You pick up the kit bag. You walk to your car. You drive home. For the first time in 27 years, nobody is expecting you anywhere tomorrow.